Thì các bạn đây, một số cái buồng lái các la bàn từ, la bàn con quay. Thứ hai cái này thì các bạn cũng một nhóm vào đây này, những cái này để thầy xem các bạn tất cả những cái lưu ý khi sử dụng các cái trang thiết bị này. Trừ cái radar ra nhỉ, cái radar cộng với những cái AF này thôi, cái nhóm radar sau. Máy này là một này, anh này là hai này, máy lái là ba này, bốn này, sâu này, năm này. Ta cứ cho là cái đỏ đây là cái của một nhóm này, ông xanh này một nhóm này, ông xanh đâu nào, tạm thời bên này đây. Thế như vậy là ở riêng vàng vàng này một cái nhóm SX riêng, bởi vì đây là thiết bị mới mà nó cũng nhiều vấn đề lắm. Tiếp này, bên này rõ chưa?
Dạ rồi.
Tiếp tục bên này là thiết bị tuyến hành trình thì bên này lại xanh đỏ nó ngược lại một tí này. Lúc nãy xanh là của thằng vô tuyến điện này, bây giờ xanh thì của thằng máy điện này. Ví dụ cái xanh này là nhóm radar đúng không, đặc trưng của nó là radar đúng không? Rồi ông Netdisk này cũng vào một cái nhóm màu đỏ đỏ đây, cho nó chả có vấn đề gì cả, hai nhóm thôi. Đây, rồi bên này cũng thế, chia ra xem nào. Netdisk màu đỏ bên này thì bây giờ cái ông màu đỏ thằng GPS này, bởi vì thằng này có radar rồi này, radar riêng radar màu xanh thì bên này thằng GPS. Ok, đúng rồi, màu xanh là radar đúng không, màu đỏ đại trưng Netdisk đúng không? Rồi anh đây đi cùng GPS quá. Còn lại các anh này xin mời. Thiết bị này hết, nó không nhiều nha. Đấy là thiết bị điện vô tuyến điện hàng hải. Còn ngoài ra các bạn thấy ở bên này thì hết rồi. Cái anh này này, hiển thị góc lái này thì nó liên quan tới máy lái, ông này thì liên quan đến ông này, hết rồi. Bên này thiết bị ghi giữ được tuyến hành trình cũng không có gì nhiều, báo động trực canh cũng không có gì nhiều. Hai cái này cũng có thể bỏ đi được. Không phải bỏ nhưng mà gần như cái sự chuẩn bị của các bạn không cần nhiều. Tất cả những ghi chú, tất cả những cái lưu ý khi sử dụng máy trước chuyến hành trình khi từ biển khơi xa. Còn một số cái thiết bị khác rất nhiều, ví dụ như này: đèn hành trình, còi, ống nhòm, daylight, rồi chuông còng nha. Sổ tay đặc tính điều động, các dấu hiệu cũng phải xem xét: black ball shape, cái hình cầu đấy, rồi hình thoi, là hình thoi đây, nhật ký hàng hải, kế hoạch chuyến đi, bảo dưỡng, nhật ký bảo dưỡng, niêm yết buồng lái, wheelhouse booster, thẻ hoa tiêu, pilot card, rồi cờ hiệu đều phải kiểm tra hết ạ. Thế nhưng mà thôi, những cái này thì nó có checklist kiểm tra, sau này chúng ta sẽ tìm hiểu thêm. Rồi, thế như vậy các nhóm chúng ta có được chưa? Chia làm hai nhóm thiết bị điện vô tuyến điện hải được chưa? Hai nhóm phân chia thế được không ạ? Sao?
Dạ, dạ được. Dạ. Vậy là cái thằng radar là chung luôn với thêm là AES với lại cái thiết bị thông tin liên lạc luôn đúng không thầy?
Thì thầy đánh dấu đây nhìn chưa?
Dạ rồi, dạ rồi. Đây, dạ. Em hỏi lại xét minh là chính xác rồi.
Thầy đánh dấu đây nhìn này.
Dạ.
Bên này thì cái phần nhóm của AES, Edix thì bạn Huy sao phát biểu gì?
Dạ thưa thầy, nhóm em cho hỏi cho thầy hỏi thầy một xíu à. Tại
Ừ.
hôm bữa nhóm em có đăng ký là về làm về ấn phẩm hàng hải á, là về giới thiệu ấn phẩm hàng hải và cách tra và sử dụng ấn phẩm á thầy.
Ừ.
Bây giờ nhóm nó có phải thay đổi gì không thầy nhỉ?
Không phải thay đổi gì, cái đấy thì nó cứ rất là cụ thể rồi. Có điều là bạn có thắc mắc cái gì thắc mắc thôi.
Dạ tại vì hôm bữa em thấy thầy nhắn là các nhóm thiết bị phải xem xét lại, em sợ nhóm em thuộc bên nhóm thiết bị á thầy.
Không, thiết bị là thiết bị, các cái thiết bị, bởi vì có mấy anh chả hiểu gì nhắc đi nhắc lại trên lớp rồi. Anh ấy nhận các cái thiết bị thông tin liên lạc VSF, FHF vào một nhóm. Thế thử
Dạ
hỏi xem
dạ
cái đấy làm được cái gì? Chẳng lẽ tôi trừ điểm?
dạ dạ em hiểu rồi, em cảm ơn thầy ạ.
Nhớ là các thiết bị thông tin liên lạc của cái nhóm nào đó. nhóm radar đấy, thì không những cái VSF, MF, HF còn Iversaxi có nhá, Laptex có nhá, đừng đùa đâu, nhiều lắm. Thông tin liên lạc không những là nghe gọi mà ta còn nhận tin đấy chứ, nó cũng là thông tin liên lạc chứ ạ, đâu phải cứ nghe gọi mới là thông tin liên lạc đâu. Đấy, khi xuống tàu các thành viên tham gia trực ca hàng hải phải làm quen với tất cả các trang thiết bị trên buồng lái như đã được liệt kê dưới đây, trên đây. Khi làm quen ban đầu nhất thiết phải có cái sĩ quan phụ trách hướng dẫn và giám sát. Về nguyên tắc chung thì khi làm quen với các thiết bị là phải vận hành, kiểm tra và thử các chức năng. Cần thiết phải nghiên cứu kỹ các cái tài liệu hướng dẫn của nhà sản xuất hay các cái quy trình hướng dẫn do tàu thiết lập trước khi thực hiện. Đối với những thiết bị mới gặp lần đầu, phải nghiên cứu kỹ lưỡng về mục đích lắp đặt và sử dụng, các thông số kỹ thuật, quy trình vận hành, xử lý sự cố thông thường và bảo quản bảo dưỡng. Đây là các trang thiết bị. Thế hôm nay thì thầy tạm thời cái phần này ở đây đã cho các bạn xem một số băng video clip về vấn đề về quản lý buồng lái, mà cụ thể là lập tuyến hành trình. Lập tuyến hành trình. Từ từ đã xem cái phần break what keeping break trực ca buồng lái. Các bạn nghe tiếng không?
Dạ có thầy.
Có thầy.
The work of navigating officers goes on winter and summer, day and night, in calm weather and in storm. This applies equally whether engaged in passage planning, taking the watch, or entering or leaving confined waters under pilotage. It is critical work, as over 80% of insured losses due to collision, grounding, and contact damage are said to arise from human error. This program examines the work of the officer of the watch during watchkeeping. Any shipping casualty, whether it's by grounding, collision, or fire, represents an enormous cost to the maritime community. In addition to the lives which can be lost and the environmental damage which may be caused, the burden of increased insurance costs affects all ships. Yet, most shipping casualties are avoidable. Analysis of statistics shows that up to 80% of losses are due to human error, and that often means Bridge watchkeeping error. Bridge watchkeeping is the most important activity on board a ship at sea. While on watch, the responsibility for the safety and security of the ship and all those on board falls squarely on the watchkeeping officer. This task requires good training, a high standard of skills, and effective time management. The prime task of the watchkeeping officer is to ensure that the ship is never put in a position of uncontrollable risk. This means always knowing the ship's situation and keeping a good lookout at all times. The officer will need to divide his time between various activities, which include navigation, maintaining a radar watch, and a lookout. Manning levels on the bridge will depend on the type of passage and the type of ship. In busy coastal waters and in poor visibility, there will be a need for additional lookouts. The principle is that the requirements for safe navigation must come before all other operations on board. Every watchkeeper has known the moment when a routine watch has suddenly developed into a critical situation. To be able to respond effectively at that moment means having followed the correct procedures up until then. This starts by being fully prepared at the beginning of the voyage. Officers need to know the company's and the master's standing orders. They must also familiarize themselves with their ship. They need to know how to use the main engines and to understand the operational limitations of the ship's propulsion and steering systems. The right way to start a watch is to get up on the bridge early.
Good evening. Norwegian course. Any instructions?
Once on the bridge, the incoming watchkeeper must check the master's night orders relating to the passage. It is good practice to check the planned track for the entire watch. This will give an idea of what situations are likely to develop. Being early will allow plenty of time for your eyes to become accustomed to the light and to familiarize yourself with the ship's situation. Is any adverse weather forecast for the watch? During the handover, the officer needs to check that all the navigational equipment is functioning correctly. The outgoing watchkeeping officer must be certain that the new watchkeeper is fit for duty, so that the safety of the ship is being transferred into safe hands. The new watchkeeper must not be under the influence of drink or drugs. More often, fatigue may be a concern. If there is any doubt about an officer's ability to take his watch, then the master must be informed. The new watchkeeper double checks the radar and ARPA settings and the navigational instruments. The handing over watchkeeper should give an assessment of the navigational situation, pointing out the systems being used, any faults or errors, indicating any traffic that could be a threat. The new watchkeeper is told whether the steering is set for manual or automatic, the course being steered, and compass error. He must confirm all these for himself. The gyro compass, its repeaters, and the magnetic compass are checked and compared. When both watchkeepers are satisfied that everything is as it should be, then the new watchkeeping officer takes charge. Watch handover must never take place during a maneuver or during a collision avoidance procedure. Normally, the outgoing watchkeeper will remain on the bridge to complete the log. The basis of keeping a safe watch is to maintain a good grasp of the ship's situation. This entails watching the surroundings as well as using the navigational instruments. You must keep an all-around lookout in both sound, vision, and by radar. When the watchkeeping officer is the only person on the bridge, keeping a good lookout is his first priority. If the workload on the officer grows to a point where he cannot keep an effective lookout, he must call for assistance in good time. Lookouts must be available at all times to be called to the bridge if required. Rather than leaving them to get on with the task, all lookouts should be properly briefed by the watchkeeping officer. Instructions should be given about what landmarks, lights, and buoys to look out for, in addition to watching for other ships. A vital part of the watchkeeping officer's job is to listen out to the VHF for any signals or warnings and traffic messages.
Please repeat. Number 2828.
He must be aware of the movements and the compass bearings of all approaching ships. The other vital task is to ensure that the ship's track made good is the intended track over the ground. It's important to check that all steering alterations are put into effect and that they have the intended result. The ship should have a passage plan. This will show the officer the track to navigate. It must also include information on the chart, with a notebook giving additional information. The passage plan should show safety margins in difficult passages, alter course positions, clearing bearings for obstacles, tidal streams, and so on. It should provide sufficient information so that he does not need to keep referring to manuals and pilot books on the passage. Lights, visual, and radar landmarks should all have been noted and plotted. The main engines are at the disposal of the watchkeeping officer to navigate the ship. Watchkeeping officers need to manage their time, balancing time spent on the radar, at the chart, and looking at the surroundings, cross-checking and verifying the information from all three sources, ensuring that they see what is actually there. High on the list of priorities is the monitoring of other traffic. The important thing is to think defensively. Try to anticipate. Never get into situations that you cannot get out of. All the time, think ahead. Ask yourself, where is that echo going? What might he do next? What are my options? It is vital that close quarter situations are avoided. All ships should be navigated according to the collision regulations, but it cannot be relied upon that others will do the correct thing. You must never risk the safety of your ship on that assumption. In potentially dangerous situations, it is essential to be decisive and to take positive action early. If the problem ship is tracking you, he will notice a clear change in course. Slowing down is an option, but remember, this takes time to register on the other ship's radar. Here, the vessel on the starboard bow is on a collision course. An alteration of course will solve the problem. The officer checks that the alteration is taking place. Here, the course alteration has had the desired effect, and there is no longer a risk of collision. This is confirmed visually. The changing bearing indicates that the danger is past. Whenever possible, make a visual check. Never rely entirely on electronics. Once the danger is past, the watch-keeping officer will bring the ship back onto the intended track.
Good evening, sir.
When the master comes on the bridge, it must be made quite clear who has the responsibility for controlling the ship.
All the experience in the set. No, sir. I want to course to starboard for a crossing vessel. I brought it back on the course. Also, not much, sir. One vessel in the port was 3 points. That's not good to Upper. Nice. That's right.
The watch-keeping officer will always maintain control of the ship unless specifically told otherwise by the master.
Give me a call if you need something. Yes.
The passage plan should indicate the method and frequency of fixing the ship's position. Offshore, this might mean once every few hours. Here, satellite systems like GPS will be the most useful. It's worth occasionally taking a sun or star sight by sextant. This will keep you in practice and will ensure that you're not entirely dependent on electronic aids to determine your position. In coastal waters, where the position of the ship is more critical, more than one method of fixing must always be used to cross-check for accuracy. In narrow waters, the frequency of fixing will need to be much greater too, once every 15 minutes or more often. There must be no risk of the ship getting into danger between fixes. Parallel indexing is a very useful technique in coastal waters. The passage plan will indicate where it's to be used. The track of a radar conspicuous point is drawn on a relative motion ARPA or radar display. The offset of the track is the distance the ship needs to keep off the point. In poor visibility, parallel indexing can be extremely beneficial, and all watchkeeping officers need to be thoroughly familiar with it. Under no circumstances does this technique replace regular plotting of the ship's position. In addition, the watchkeeping officer needs, when time is available, to carry out a number of routine monitoring tasks. These must include checking the compass error and checking other navigational equipment for errors. Other items to watch could include fire alarms, watertight integrity monitoring equipment, ballast control apparatus, and telecommunication equipment. All these tasks need to be recorded in the log. This record will provide a useful check should there be any malfunction. It is essential that the watchkeeping officer remains aware of what is going on inside his ship. An important consideration is when to call the master. The safety of the ship is the master's responsibility, and the watchkeeping officer is discharging that responsibility only within the limits of the master's orders. Precise instructions for calling the master to the bridge must be set out in the standing orders. For example, call me if any ship is to pass with the closest point of approach of less than 1 mile. If the watchkeeping officer is in any doubt as to whether he should call the master, he must call him. The ship on the port bow is on a collision course. A potentially hazardous situation is developing. It is better to call the master too early rather than too late.
Okay. What's the last bits you had?
The master makes a quick assessment of the situation and takes over control of the ship, making his intentions clear to the watchkeeping officer.
Second, taking over the watch from the top. Next. 000. 0000.
It's a good idea to record the time of such a handover in the ship's log. The master then takes appropriate
Đang hành động
action.
kính va đó.
Could you give one shot once, please? And
It may be appropriate to use the ship's whistle or other signal to indicate a change of course to nearby ships. It is always better to be defensive in your navigation, bearing in mind the possibility that the other ship may not do the correct thing. With the master having taken over control, the watchkeeping officer remains on the bridge to help him. Teamwork on the bridge is always important. In difficult traffic situations, it becomes vital. The officer of the watch gives the master his fullest support, not just simply doing what he's told, but double-checking things as well.
wheel on starboard 20s. Alright, so we just turn now 5 degrees.
Watchkeepers should remember the words of a famous American admiral.
East to 10.
His rank and experience should flatter himself that immune to the inexplicable lapses of judgment, calculation, and memory, or slips of the tongue in giving orders, which have so often brought disaster to men of the highest reputation and ability.
That was close, wasn't it? Very close. Funny, how come we didn't all the questions to do so?
Are you happy with the situation now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can take over the watch now.
Thanks.
And give me a call if there's any doubt.
Thanks.
The watchkeeping officer must always stay alert and double-check everything he does. There is no more important task than watchkeeping. It involves the responsibility for the safety of the ship and everyone on board. The watchkeeping officer must always Maintain an all-around lookout involving visual, radar, sound, and VHF. Know the ship's situation and how this relates to both fixed hazards and other ships in the vicinity. Ensure that the track made good is the intended track. Know when to call the master to the bridge and then call him early. Routinely check the ship's navigational and other equipment. Based on good training and experience, each officer must learn how to manage his time on watch. There will be many demands on him, but he must always bear in mind that the safety of the ship comes before all else. Further information and advice on the subject of watchkeeping can be found in the Nautical Institute's publications, Bridge Team Management and Bridge Watchkeeping.
Rồi bây giờ chúng ta sang phần lập tuyến hành trình, voice planning.
This video is going to examine one of the key tasks on the ship, voyage planning by the navigating officer. A good voyage plan with all the information, including information needed in emergencies, is the only basis for a safe voyage. Poor voyage planning may not always result in an accident, but it puts the watchkeeping officer in a weak position if things start to go wrong, and inevitably they will one day. As well as reducing accidents and improving safety, Regulation 34 of SOLAS Chapter 5 requires all ships to have a voyage plan before proceeding to sea. The information it gives frees the watchkeeping officer from spending time on reference books and tables. It will ensure that the officer is fully aware of the master's requirements. The plan must cover the entire voyage, from berth to berth. It must be completed well before departure and must be approved by the master. If the voyage plan is your responsibility, you need to be aware that doing it properly takes time. The first step is to check that all the necessary charts and publications are up to date and that no change has taken place to the scheduled destination. Next, there must be a discussion with the master to take into account all the commercial requirements of the voyage and then changes to scheduled destinations. The master's experience will enable him to suggest a route, pointing out potential hazards.
Okay, second mate, well, on our present voyage plan, we're going to be going from the English Channel.
One issue to discuss with the master is weather routing. Even if the ship does not use a weather routing service, it's always worth allowing for the weather. If the shortest route is likely to take you into storms, consider a route going around them. Avoiding storms and storm damage may be cheaper and safer and possibly quicker in the long run.
So we must keep a good watch for other tropical storm warnings. Okay, that's going to be a problem on this question.
The next stage is to collect all the information you will require. This includes suitable charts of as large a scale as needed, the appropriate pilot books, routing charts, and ocean voyage planning manuals. Port information for the start and end of the voyage. Other essentials are tide tables, the list of lights, radio signals information, and weather information. Further items required include any relevant notices to mariners and navigational warnings, as well as the ship's characteristics, including the draft and the maneuvering data. There may be additional information such as local charts on board. Another resource is personal experience. If you don't know a voyage or a port yourself, it may well be known by one or more of the deck officers from previous ships or voyages. Ask around. Find out what they know. Voyage planning using an electronic chart display and information system, an ECDIS, requires exactly the same information. The process of appraisal, planning, execution, and monitoring still applies. Only the methods have changed. Some of the information required may be available in the ECDIS itself if vector charts are being used. But if raster charts are used, then exactly the same reference books will be needed as for paper charts. A voyage plan may include both vector and raster charts. The vector mode of an ECDIS is based on a multi-layered, fully digitized chart. Layers of the display can be adjusted to suit operational or planning requirements. The symbols used are different to those on paper charts. These charts have no edges. They are seamless. The raster mode of operation is based on digitized photographs of standard already existing nautical charts. So they are not seamless. It is a single level basis for navigation. It contains no more and no less information than the paper chart, and so the symbols used will be very familiar. Both raster and vector modes rely on electronic position fixing systems, such as the GPS, to give the ship's position and projected course. With both, it's possible to superimpose other data, such as ARPA or radar. Both systems can be used for voyage planning. Whichever system is used, the first step, as with paper charts, is the preliminary discussion with the master.
4.5 days we need to achieve 12 knots of speed of advance, which is possible, no problem at all, sir.
Always start with a clear paper chart. Check that the charts have been updated with the latest corrections. A small notebook is essential to record key information about the voyage, such as alter course positions. However it is done, all the other deck officers must be able to understand the plan as well. You must always be consistent. The plan must be clear and the notes easy to read. The objective is for the plan to help other watchkeepers, not to give them an additional problem in deciphering it. The first thing marked on the chart are the no-go areas, land, shoals, wrecks, and so on. Then, mark off all areas where your draft is more than the depth on the chart. The approaches to many ports involve passages where tidal calculations are crucial. Where possible, don't rely on the tide. Let it be a safety bonus. The track is then drawn. In critical areas, the margins of safety should be marked on both sides of the track. How large they should be will depend on the ship's size, the area itself, as well as your personal preference. Perhaps your company or your captain has an established minimum distance from a danger area. The planned track should always be plotted to clear hazards at a safe distance. Voyage planning with a vector chart on ECDIS is more like using a database on a computer. As on a paper chart, it's very easy to align the planned track precisely to any leading light marks or sectors. But it's not just a matter of creating a series of waypoints and lines. Each waypoint needs to contain the necessary information relating to the autopilot systems, such as radius of turn and planned speed and track limits. If you need to use buoys as marks, be sure to use a safe distance off so the ship doesn't run over them. Many ships will use simple distances such as 1 mile. So it's worth using unusual distances off marks to avoid other ships who are using simple distances in their autopilots. On raster charts, the creation of no-go areas is very similar to the process in paper chart voyage planning. Whatever method is being used, always prepare for the unexpected. What would happen if there was an engine failure at the critical moment in the voyage? What information would you want immediately if you were on watch at that moment? When paper charts are being used, all the essential elements of the plan must be listed in the notebook to amplify and support the track on the chart. Items in the notebook should include the safe speed, positions where changes in machinery status are needed, manpower requirements, course alteration positions, points where reports to shore stations are required, minimum depth clearances where critical, and plans for reaching safe water in an emergency. The tidal stream must be marked on the paper chart. If the time of the voyage changes, the track may stay the same, but some data, such as the tidal information, will need to be changed. With electronic voyage planning, the information that would be in the notebook is stored as mariner's notes on the chart itself, or in a pilot data file as part of the voyage plan. Different systems use different ways to achieve this, but the same information is needed. A means of verifying the position of all changes in course must be marked on the chart. When deep sea, GPS is an efficient method of position fixing. Inshore, other means must be used to check the position, at least as a secondary method. At night, lights can provide a useful source of fixes and bearing information. All relevant navigational marks should be indicated on the chart as part of the plan. There's often not the time to look them up while underway. On large-scale charts, wheel-over bearings should be found that are parallel to the new course. That way, even if the ship is to the left or right of the intended track, it will come around onto the correct course. It is important in planning a voyage to specify how the position of the ship should be fixed and how often. Most watch-keeping officers will have developed their own rule of thumb for timings. But this is inadequate for a reliable plan. The time between fixes must be such that it's impossible for the ship to get into danger between fixes. Well offshore, this might mean once every few hours. Closer inshore, the position of the ship is more critical, and fixes must be more frequent. It is essential for the ship's position to be ascertained by cross-checking the results of different fixing methods. Radar and visual fixing both have their advantages and disadvantages. Knowing when to use which as primary or secondary fixing methods is part of a watchkeeper's skill. A thorough voyage plan will indicate which method should be used during different sectors of the voyage. The chart should be marked with a useful number of visual and radar conspicuous objects. These can be derived from the chart itself, the pilot books, or from the mariner's personal experience. It's important to put in only a small number of these points. Don't cover the chart with dozens of radar conspicuous objects that the officer will not have time to use. What is needed is the right number, keeping in mind the closeness to land and the speed of the ship. The timing and method of position fixing is equally important in an electronic voyage plan. The mariner's notes or pilot data file should include the position of both visible and radar visible objects. An electronic voyage plan will have a reliance on satellite navigation systems, GPS and GLONASS at present, but in the future Galileo as well. In confined waters, an alternative system must be used for checking the position, and this can easily be done using the radar maps and radar interlay of the ECDIS. Checks of the position by radar or using leading lights or sectors are of vital importance close inshore, as there's always the risk that GPS will become unavailable for some reason. With raster charts, there may be datum irregularities in comparison with the WGS-84 datum. The ship's speed is another crucial aspect of voyage planning that must not be left to chance, whether the voyage is planned electronically or on paper. It is vital to plan the time of arrival. How does it fit in with the tides, the pilot services, or the berth availability? The speeds and waypoint ETAs need to be marked on the chart and in the voyage planning notebook. Landfalls also need to be clearly marked. One objective of the voyage plan is to help you and other watchkeepers in using time efficiently. There should be no need to look for information in manuals and books. The notebook can be used to detail instructions that would involve writing on large areas of the chart. The chart and the notebook are both essential elements of the voyage plan. A very powerful method of monitoring the ship's track during a coastal voyage is parallel indexing. This consists of drawing the track of a fixed radar conspicuous point on a relative motion radar display. It works best when the radar is stabilized north up. The line will be parallel to the ship's ground track. The cross-index range of the track is the distance the ship needs to keep off the point. Any cross-track tendency, caused by tidal stream, for example, will become apparent by the target moving off the parallel line. This plot enables a constant check of the ship's track to be kept. Fixes still need to be taken even when parallel indexing is taking place. In poor visibility, parallel indexing is invaluable. For watchkeepers to be familiar with this technique, they must practice it in conditions of good visibility. Parallel indexing is equally valuable using electronic chart systems. And the same principle of practicing it in good visibility also applies. The parallel indexing needs to be set up at the planning stage. Here the line appears under the course and is offset by the officer of the watch when the ship is running up to the selected radar visible object. On both paper or screen, the voyage must be planned berth to berth, even for passages where the ship will be navigated by a pilot. The voyage plan must be discussed with the pilot when he comes on board so that everyone on the bridge will be aware of the intended voyage. The entire bridge team will then be able to monitor the ship's progress effectively. Where the ship is headed into an area of restricted navigation, such as inside a harbour, the plan should include an abort point. This is the last moment that the ship can turn back for any reason. As the ship runs up to this point, all arrangements, such as berth and tug availability, must be confirmed with the appropriate authorities.
So, second officer speaking, I have the passage plan ready. Could you please come up on the bridge?
Once you're satisfied with the plan, it needs to be checked and approved by the master. The principle of double-checking the plan must be part of the bridge routine.
Okay.
The master may be able to suggest improvements based on his greater experience. This approval of the plan is perhaps the most important part of voyage planning and will generally be required as part of the ship's safety management system.
Can you give me a brief on the voyage plan today? Yes, sir.
The master's approval of the plan is equally important, whether the plan is on paper or done electronically. Both master and navigating officer need to allow sufficient time for a thorough examination of the plan. As the plan must be made well before starting the voyage, the departure time may change. This may not affect the track, but certainly will affect tides and voyage times. The plan will need to be updated when departure time is known and throughout the voyage as times change. The overall objective of the plan must be to give the watchkeeping officers a plan to follow and sufficient information to enable them to do that easily. The plan will also provide a backup store of facts, so that if things do go wrong, there will be information immediately available to help. Overall, it is essential, whether the plan is done on paper or electronically, that there is a complete berth-to-berth voyage plan for every voyage. The voyage plan should be marked on the chart with supplementary notes in a notebook or as mariner's notes. The chart should have, in addition to the track, useful information including safety margins, clearing bearings, wheel over positions, and tidal streams. The plan must be approved by the master in good time. The plan must be updated as required. Whether it is planned using traditional paper charts or an electronic chart system, a good voyage plan must provide the information the watchkeeper needs. A good voyage plan is the only foundation for a safe and efficient voyage.
Rồi, chúng ta vừa xem hai cái băng, cái vẻ cũng mệt mỏi nhỉ. Nghỉ ngơi một tí, xem là vừa nghỉ ngơi, trong lúc nghỉ ngơi cũng nói một chút sao những cái băng vừa rồi chúng ta thấy thế nào, lập tuyến hành trình vừa rồi. Các bạn có lĩnh hội được gì thêm không? Chúng ta có thể khoảng 15 phút, có ai hỏi thắc mắc gì thì hỏi. Các bạn nhóm Navigation Chart Publication, nhóm Cơn Phạm Hoàng Hải. Bạn Thuần à? Trần Văn Thuần à?
Dạ, nhóm bọn em có 6 người thầy.
Ở nhóm đấy là phải báo cáo đầu tiên, báo cáo trước cái lập tuyến hành trình, bởi vì cái lập tuyến hành trình nó ứng dụng cái nhóm của bạn. Được chưa?
Dạ. Dạ được thầy ơi.
Rồi, cho các bạn xem một tí video nữa, có các bạn có quá tải không?
Dạ được thầy.
Dạ được thầy.
Navigation Chart and Public.
Thầy vẫn chưa chiếu á thầy ơi.
Chưa chiếu à? Ok.
Dạ đúng rồi thầy.
This series considers a number of important issues in bridge resource management.
Cái phần quản lý nguồn nhân lực buồng lái này nhiều video lắm.
Part 1 of the Bridge Procedure series discusses passage or voyage planning and illustrates the use of charts. This video deals with navigational charts and associated publications. Charts are vital both to passage or voyage planning, as well as for navigation. A chart is the prime aid for situational awareness. Even the most efficient bridge team cannot function effectively without an up-to-date, accurate chart. But, however good the chart, it starts to become out of date as soon as it's printed, because the environment changes all the time. The commonest changes are man-made, such as lights, buoys, and new obstructions. These are often in coastal waters where sudden surprises most endanger the ship and increase the workload and stress on the bridge team. The nautical press regularly features reports of ships which have hit problems related to charts. Either no charts, the wrong charts, unofficial charts, or charts not kept up to date. To take one example, while waiting for a berth at Teesside, the master of the motor tanker Marion decided to anchor. The charts had not been corrected, and the ship put the anchor down on a new pipeline, severely damaging it. The ship's owners were successfully sued by the pipeline owners for $25 million US. The changes to the UK Admiralty charts are contained in the weekly Notices to Mariners. Hydrographic offices in other parts of the world will have their own methods of updating chart information. Most changes are notified by port and coastal authorities and surveys, but mariners can also register changes that they have observed.
Radio navigation warnings, good afternoon. Yeah, the dangerous wreck, yeah. Trinity House informed, voyage to be laid, no pollution evident, search and rescue being coordinated by MRCC Dover. Right, MRCC Dover, thank you very much.
Ships can call the radio watch at the United Kingdom Hydrographic Office directly. This is manned 24 hours a day, every day of the year. The navigation warning officer judges whether the report represents an immediate hazard to navigation. If it is, a NavTex warning is sent out. If not, the information becomes part of the database of the Hydrographic Office. This database is used in making new editions of existing charts. It is also the basis for making new charts. When a new chart is required, all the available survey information is assembled. This can include hydrographic surveys from 100 years ago and satellite photography from yesterday. It is all adjusted to the same scale and compared and contrasted. Then it is sifted, selected, and combined into a workable chart with the right amount of information for safe navigation. New surveys are referenced to WGS 84, World Geodetic System 1984, the reference datum for GPS. New editions and new charts may also be referenced to WGS 84. Many older charts are not suitable for plotting GPS positions because it's not possible to compare the chart datum with the GPS datum. A chart can only be as accurate as the survey information that is used to compile it. A depth is marked on the chart because a survey said that was the depth. But only in a very few areas has every meter of the seabed been surveyed. Beware of what may lie between soundings. The QE2 grounded off Martha's Vineyard in 1992. The official report found that a contributory factor was that the actual depth of the rocks was significantly shallower than the depth marked on the chart. The chart was based on a 1939 survey, which was not up to today's standards. There were no survey dates on the charts, and the official report considered that the master was deceived by their appearance and placed undue reliance on them. The cruise had to be abandoned, and the vessel had to proceed to dry dock. The cost can probably be counted in millions of dollars. Improving and keeping charts up to date is an essential task. Once an alteration has been confirmed, it's included in the Notice to Mariners, and a tracing for a chart correction may be drawn up. It's important that the tracing is precise. verify this, a correction is made using the tracing. This is compared to a correction done using only the notices to mariners. The tracing is checked and redrawn if necessary. All the charts held at the United Kingdom Hydrographic Office are then brought up to date. They include all the corrections right up to the date of purchase. These methods, using templates and special stamps and blocks, are only suitable for correcting large numbers of charts. But the care and attention to detail and the precision required are equally important, whether you have to correct one chart or several hundred. Good ship handling counts for nothing if your charts are inaccurate or out of date. Accurate correcting is the crucial last link in the chain of good chart making. As well as being essential for safe navigation, the ship's folio of charts may be worth a lot of money in its own right. Changes need to be done correctly. Never use correcting fluid when correcting charts. A badly corrected chart can be worse than an uncorrected chart. This red is the wrong color and will make the chart difficult to read at night and may well fade in time. This correction is simply not clear. And this correction is in the wrong place. It can be false economy to buy second-hand charts, as there is no guarantee that they've been accurately updated. A badly corrected chart can also cause the ship to fail an inspection.
Captain, that means that your charts are not corrected since early this year.
Not having up-to-date charts can mean an automatic detention under port state control.
Yeah, we're requiring for
And failing an inspection can be very costly for the ship.
Request, you know. Your request you have to receive.
Correcting charts takes time and concentration. It's not possible to keep a lookout while correcting charts. The approach is the same for all corrections, whether they are permanent, temporary, or preliminary, and whether you have tracings, the notices to mariners, or a change received from Navtex. Take out each portfolio of charts and identify those which need corrections. Then, if the time available is limited, prioritize them. Start with those needed for the current voyage, then those for the upcoming voyage, and finally the remainder. Next, the drawing instruments. You will need 2 pens, a 0.15mm to put in information, and a 0.25mm to delete. Ink. The correct color is violet. It can be seen in all lights, and it's clear where the correction has been made. Pencils. HB for keeping the chart correction list up to date, and a 7H for pinpointing positions on the chart, although a pair of compasses is frequently used for this purpose. Adhesive, for sticking block corrections in place. It must not distort the chart or block, and must be permanent. A parallel rule, either the roller or the stepping type are equally suitable. Dividers, for more accurate positioning. A pair of compasses with a pen attachment for drawing circles. Other useful tools include a soft eraser, a straight edge, a hacksaw blade for drawing cables, and a template for drawing symbols. Always start from the correction as detailed in the notices to mariners, even if you have tracings. Tracings do save time and help accuracy, but they're only an aid. Check that the previous correction has been done and that the chart is up to date. Read the notice carefully before starting. Work out the clearest way the correction could be put on the chart. Using tracings means that the position of the correction is found quickly. Line up the tracing accurately using the reference points given on the tracing. In this case, the position of the wreck is the most important element. The correction must never be copied down as it appears on the tracing. Stand comfortably. Don't stretch when actually making the correction. Only after you've completed all the corrections on a chart should you add to the correction list at the bottom left-hand corner. Always ensure that the correction numbers are well separated. The ship's correction list must be updated at the same time. The second correction we're going to look at is a change of a light. Always understand and plan the correction before you begin. Always put in the new information before deleting the old. Rather than trying to change numbers, it's often clearer to write the new numbers out and delete the old. Or it may be possible to use the old information using arrows to change its position. Analyze what would be clearest for navigation. Remember, all positions must be accurate. Depths and symbols must be clear, and all legends must be readable. When all the corrections on a chart are done, record that on the chart and in the ship's list of chart corrections, so that the master, the relief officers, and any inspectors can easily check for themselves that the charts are up to date. Block corrections are perhaps the easiest to do, but they need to be positioned accurately. First, carefully cut off the black line around the edge, then place the block in position. If you find yourself putting one block on top of another, double check that the chart is the latest reprint. Other sources of information vital to passage planning also need to be corrected. These include lights, fog signals, and radio signals. The notices to mariners include these changes, as well as reprints of the navigational warnings given out by radio. It's worth checking through these to ensure that you are aware of those that will affect your ship's trading area. Keeping lists of lights, fog signals, and radio signals up to date is very important. As with the charts, accuracy and clarity are vital. Although the basic elements of navigation have not changed with time, new technology does bring continual improvement to the equipment available on the bridge. Until recently, these improvements have been incremental. Satellite photography for better charts, ARPA and digitized radar for collision avoidance, GPS for position fixing. Today, the technology on the bridge is on the threshold of a new era, when many advances will be combined into the integrated bridge. This can incorporate a display that includes the chart, the passage plan, the ARPA, and the GPS information. Some systems, raster systems, are based on a photographic image of the chart that cannot be adapted. Others, vector systems, work with a fully digitized chart. The information displayed can be altered to suit the officer or passage. There are a number of these systems in development and early use. In time, it seems likely that they will come to replace the traditional chart on many ships. The advantages are that these systems make the position of the ship very easy for everyone to visualize. They offer an improved situational awareness for the bridge team. This is especially valuable in harbor approaches and in traffic situations with fast currents. Light sectors change as the bearing of the ship changes. The outline of the ship is to scale. Often other data, such as light lists or radio signals, can be displayed in a window. This is handy when passage planning. The display can be adapted to the ship's or the individual officer's needs, displaying more or less data as required. Often, the information on display is recorded and can be replayed later, a useful training aid. This recording may come to replace all or part of the traditional log. But, however good they are only an aid to navigation. Over-reliance on electronic aids can cause accidents. Traditional navigational skills and proper training remain vitally important. And the new systems still need to be updated. Today, this is usually done from a CD-ROM, but eventually it may be done by a satellite link-up. These systems do require training and adaptation by an officer. They do not change the basics of safe navigation and the balance the officer of the watch has to strike between the window, the radar, and the chart. But they do offer a new and effective tool to help the navigator. Whether digital or paper, accurate and up-to-date charts and navigational information are vital to every ship. That means correcting the chart and associated publications regularly in the right way. Remember that the chart is only as accurate as the surveys used to compile it and the corrections made by previous officers. Knowing where you are going, and the hazards of your surroundings is the objective of safe navigation. An accurate and up-to-date chart is the essential basis for this.
Rồi. Vậy là chúng ta cũng xem tương đối nhiều, hôm nay toàn xem video là chủ yếu, thêm một tí các thiết bị, liệt kê các loại thiết bị, các cái dụng cụ trên buồng lái. Thời gian còn lại có lẽ chúng ta cũng phải làm tí tóm tắt chứ nhỉ. Và cũng lưu ý với các bạn thuyết trình là càng sớm càng tốt. Thì
dạ thầy ơi, cho em hỏi cái thầy ơi. Dạ, như là giờ nhóm em làm cái AR3 á thầy, vậy là nhóm em cũng làm thêm cái hệ thống AIS với cái thông tin liên lạc rồi góc chỉ lái rồi mấy cái phần mà thầy nãy thầy cho là tụi em giờ phải liệt kê ra hết cả lý thuyết với cả
không thầy, tất cả các trang thiết bị thầy nhắc lại, đừng hỏi thầy lần nữa, thầy cáu này. Tất cả các cái trang thiết bị như là SX radar, AR3, máy lái tự động vân vân, gọi là mấy cái thiết bị điện, vô tuyến điện hàng hải như thế, thì thầy không yêu cầu các bạn nói về lý thuyết, nguyên lý hoạt động hay là cái này cái khác. mà thầy yêu cầu các em nêu những lưu ý trong quá trình sử dụng, hoặc là những sự cố xảy ra, ví dụ như máy lái nó báo động thì các bạn hành động ra sao, được chưa?
Vâng.
Radar thì bật nó lên như nào, điều chỉnh nó ra sao, rồi trong quá trình hoạt động radar thì có những cái vấn đề gì lưu tâm chú ý. Bây giờ này còn nói lý thuyết đo nguyên lý, đo khoảng cách, nguyên lý đo góc thì nó được chưa các bạn? Có cần hỏi nữa không? Nói đi.
Dạ vậy đủ thầy, tại vì em tưởng có lý thuyết nữa nên sợ liệt kê ra làm dài cái ba bôi chứ gì thầy.
Thầy đã nhắc lại rất nhiều lần rồi mà nếu mà trình bày lý thuyết nữa sớm là thầy cắt đấy nha. Nha. Trước mắt là ba cái nhóm nó liên quan đến nhau. Nhóm một tiên, cái nhóm đầu tiên trình là các ấn phẩm hải đồ và các ấn phẩm hàng hải. Cái thứ hai là cái nhóm hải đồ giấy, lập tuyến hành trình. Cái nhóm thứ ba là hải đồ điện tử, liên quan đến nhau nha. Mỗi tuần bắt đầu từ sau, được chưa? Chúng ta thuyết trình nha. Còn bây giờ chúng ta còn khoảng 10-15 phút nữa, xin mời các bạn tóm tắt những cái phần mà nhất là cái vừa rồi đấy, cái hải đồ quan trọng. Chúng nhớ không phải là tàu nào cũng có hải đồ giấy, hải đồ EDX hết đâu. Rồi, còn bạn nào thắc mắc gì không? Rồi, không còn thắc mắc thì tự làm bài thu hoạch nhé. Khoảng độ 5 giờ 15 thì ao nhá. Rồi ra ngoài tí. Nghe chưa? Áo sớm người ta kiểm tra đó.
Dạ vâng ạ.